don't need that. How many people in this room have actually been to Musso and Frank restaurants? Oh, good, most of you. Yeah, how many? Yeah, that would be a frightening thing to find out. And if you haven't been, why the heck are you here? Would be the next question, I would imagine. Let's get started here. They tell me I have a whopping 20 minutes to do a 45-minute interview because we have two documentaries. First of all, I'll say hello to Mark Whatcott-Echeverria. I said it very well the other day. And his wife, Tina Whatcott-Echeverria. Here we go. They are the folks in charge doing the book and the documentary tonight. And we'll put Mark. Yeah, either way. You're the boss. The wife always rules. Trust me, I know this for 45 years. So for those who don't know who you are, explain your connection to the restaurant, Mark.
Sure. My name's Mark Echeverria. I'm one of the fourth generation family owners of Musso and Frank. My family bought the restaurant in 1927. It's been in the family ever since. It's now owned in the third generation. My mom and her sisters, my aunts, my uncles, my dad, and just the fourth generation running it for them. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah. So how old were you when you first walked into that restaurant?
My first memory in the restaurant was probably before this, but my first memory in the restaurant was when I was about 4 years old.
Really?
Yep.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And was it always your goal to be the guy who runs the place, or did you have other dreams at one point?
To be honest, I didn't even really think that was a possibility.
Really?
Until about 10 years ago. The restaurant was owned 50-50 by two families, our family and the Carasini family. They bought it with my great-grandfather in 1927. In 2009, our side of the family bought out the Carasinis, and that's when they needed someone from our side of the family to run it on a day-to-day basis. And they looked at the fourth generation and kind of went, "You're it," and moved down to Hollywood and never left.
And what were you doing prior to running Musso and Frank?
I was working in Alaska in the summers as a fly fishing guide, running fly fishing lodges, and training to become a bush pilot out there. I was actually flying airplanes.
Really?
Then running a ski resort in the winter.
Very cool. So the first question would be, why the book? I mean, certainly after 100 years, there's a lot to celebrate. But what was the inspiration beyond that?
You know, the book really started coming about, I would say, in 2015. We started really thinking that we wanted to put together a book. And we have, as a family, have never put forth our story officially out there. It's been written about many, many times by journalists, reporters, news, that kind of thing, but we've never actually told our story. And we wanted to do that in sort of around our Centennial. And so the way this book came out and the timing was rather perfect. But this is really the first time we've ever told our story.
It's a great story because how many restaurants last more than a couple of years these days? And there's a particular reason, I suppose, this wonderful establishment has lasted for 100 years. If you had to pinpoint it, what would that be?
Relationships and love. We put a lot of love into what we do. And we've been very, very fortunate to have such an amazing community support us for 100 years. We're really proud to serve the LA community. We're a very regular kind of a restaurant, Angelino regular, as all of you know. And it's developing those kinds of relationships that we've been very fortunate over the years to do. And that is a critical point of our success, is you guys.
Tell us who Michael Connelly is and what his place in the book was.
So Michael is he's an author, he's a novelist, most famous for writing the Bosch series, the Harry Bosch series, which was a book series and now is an Amazon series. But he's been a good friend and a customer of the restaurant for a very, very long time. And it came about, his part in the book was, I was having a business lunch in the restaurant in 2016. And I saw Michael on the other side of the room. I couldn't wait to get my business lunch done with so I could go say hi to Michael because he's a great guy to talk to. And when I went up and introduced myself to his friends, I said really quick, "Hey Michael, we're thinking about putting together a book. Who would you recommend? Or think about it. Get back to me in a couple days." He said, "I don't need to think about it. There's one guy. His name's Bob Morris from Story Farm." And Bob Morris called me the next day and said, "We want to be a part of this project." And then it just started to kind of roll from there. So Michael, Michael Connelly was involved from the very, very beginning of it. And it was really, really fun to have him a part of it.
And tell me about Michael Callahan.
Callahan is he's another author, writer. He was a contributing editor for Vanity Fair. He did an article about Musso's in 2016 in Los Angeles Magazine. It was a very large 9-page spread. And I had never heard of Michael before, Callahan, when he came in to interview me for that article in Los Angeles Magazine. And when he interviewed me in 2016, I actually got a little bit afraid of what the article was going to be about. I've never had anybody kind of dig into, you know, our story and us and what we do and why we do it the way Michael did. And then the article came out in Los Angeles Magazine, and it was just a spectacular article. So when Bob Morris from Story Farm and I were talking about who we want to actually write the narrative piece of it, I gave Bob the article, LA Magazine, and in 10 minutes he said, that's the guy. And so we called Callahan. He was thrilled to be considered for the project, and there it was. He started right away.
A few weeks ago, I don't know if you know, hopefully you do, the first restaurant in the history of Hollywood to get their own star on the Walk of Fame. And one of the best stories, that's way cool. Thank you.
It was a good day for us, that's for sure.
And one of the best stories was about Charlie Chaplin riding his horse down and having lunch there, I guess, on a fairly regular basis. So there's some pretty cool pictures in this book. Were they readily available? Did the family have them stashed away? What was the research on finding these photos?
You know, Mark, that was actually probably the toughest part about the book. Musso's, as many of you know, we have a no photo policy. We don't take photographs in the restaurant. So to find any photographs was actually a really hard thing to do. It took a lot of research. Michael Callahan did a lot of research, talking with some Hollywood-specific historians and photo archivists to get some of those photos. We were able to uncover some pretty unique ones.
There's some great stories in the book about, throughout the last 100 years, some of the celebrities who have attended the restaurant, and there's a great Jerry Lewis story. If you want to tell that, I think it's great.
Well, the short of it, and it's applicable to tonight, but short of it, Jerry Lewis came in with a bunch of his buddies, and he got Sergio to give him Sergio's red serving jacket, and he wanted to play a trick on all of his friends. So Jerry Lewis went to the bar, got a bunch of the cocktails, and then he was delivering them to his friends, and everybody just saw, you know, from basically the red shirt down, they thought it was Sergio serving, and Jerry Lewis is spilling drinks all over everybody, and then they realized rather quickly that it was Jerry Lewis, and the whole dining room erupted in laughter.
It has such a reputation. I first went there in 1974. There was a man by the name of Ralph Edwards. Anybody remember Ralph Edwards from This Is Your Life? I was working for him. I was a writer on a show called Truth or Consequences. Young Bob Barker was hosting that, and it was my first writing job. And we should go there for lunch a couple times a month. And I was in awe because I had heard about Musso and Frank, and Ralph had his own table there, and he would sit and spin stories. When I think about who's been there, from Chaplin to Hemingway to Keith Richards, what do you think it is that draws the people to Musso and Frank? The food I'm going to give you. Okay, the food's been consistent forever. From the time I was there in 74 until the other night when I was there and had the prime rib, and it tastes probably better now than it did back then. Why do people come to this restaurant?
It's a feeling that you get when you're in the restaurant, and we're very discretionary. You know, we don't make it public who comes in there. Really, the stories we ever talk about are stories that the high-profile clientele have already told. And so we don't highlight who they are. We don't really treat them any different. Or we've got a motto: we treat regulars like celebrities and celebrities like regulars. And I think they appreciate that. There are certain places that they go to be seen and be in the public, but they know Musso's they can come to and be themselves with their families. And that's very important to us, that they have that feeling, that they have a place to go where they can be with their families.
Who are some of the other regulars who have popped in there over the years?
Oh, Johnny Depp, whenever he's in town, he comes in quite a bit. You mentioned Keith Richards and the Rolling Stones for sure. Tom Selleck is a big regular.
Is he really?
Oh yeah, as well. In the past, we've had Frank Sinatra was a big one, Marilyn Monroe. You mentioned Charlie Chaplin, Rudolph Valentino. You get into the writers, Tennessee Williams, F. Scott Fitzgerald. I mean, you could really go on and on and on.
And I'm sure that there are movie and TV shows that want to shoot in your restaurant on a regular basis. You're pretty selective about that. What makes you decide whether it's a yes or no when they come in and say, we'd like to shoot in your restaurant?
You know, we're not a studio, we're a restaurant first, so we always keep that in mind. And we really only want to do films or TV shows that have some weight and some credibility to Hollywood. And in particular, the most recent one, big one, was Quentin's movie, where it was really his ode to Hollywood. And that's the kind of stuff that we want to be a part of, the Kaminsky method, where that is really kind of rich in Hollywood and rooted in Hollywood. And that's what we want to be involved with.
Some of my favorite parts of the book are the drawings, the whimsical drawings. Got in from Rick Plummer, I believe. Where'd you find him?
Rick, so Bob Morris, the publisher, Rick is Bob's dentist. So yeah, leave it up to Musso's and Musso's team to find a dentist to do the artistry work. He's a phenomenal artist, and he's a retired dentist, and used to draw and paint on his spare time, and Bob's known him for a very, very long time. So when we had the idea of doing a fold-out, and I don't know if anybody has had a chance to really look in the book, there's a really neat little fold-out that shows kind of all the celebrities from the past that Rick did the original artwork to. When we had the idea to do something like that and have some original, unique artwork, Bob's first notion was to go to Rick Plummer, and he showed us some of the artwork that Rick has done, and it was kind of like, yeah, that's it, that's what we want.
It was very Hirschfeld-like, if you're familiar with him, Broadway artist. I just thought great stuff, one of my favorite parts of the book. So, you decided finally to open up the vault and give away recipes. Was that a tough decision?
It was time, 100 years, and it's time to kind of let the cat out of the bag a little bit. And there's the one recipe that's in there that has never been talked about or published at all in any shape or form is the chicken pot pie.
Yes.
So, yeah, you might go home and cook it tonight. I love it. And if you can get it close to Musso's, let me know, and you might you might eat for free for life in there. It's actually a pretty complicated recipe, but it's fun to try. So give it a whirl.
I've been working at the Food Network for 20 years, and I'll let you in a little secret. In many of those cookbooks that these chefs give, they always leave out one ingredient. Okay? So did you do that in this, or did you give us the real thing? Here we go.
But the ingredient that might be left out is our cook's love, and so you guys will have to supplement that love for the cooks. But no, they're pretty true. The recipes are pretty true.
Tell us about the ghost of Musso and Friends.
We're pretty discretionary with the ghosts as well. Everybody who comes to Musso's wants their privacy. The ghosts are no exception, but there is one that we do like, and we like all of them, but Chef Jean Roux, who was the original chef from 1922, his presence is still widely felt in the restaurant, and he was a French Navy trained chef. He was very regimented, and we like to think that he's still very regimented in looking after us now. And him and the executive chef Jay Piamato and our chef de cuisine Danilo Aguilar, they've got a good relationship with Chef Roux. It's pretty fun. Yeah.
So this book is available Amazon and all those lovely places. So once you see this, you love it, you want to give it away for Christmas gifts, you can get it online or at Barnes & Noble or anywhere.
Yep, right now it's available only in the restaurant, exclusive in the restaurant, and come November 1, it'll be up on Amazon for the holidays.
Nice. So Tina, you've been so good, you've been very quiet, you haven't jumped in at all. Tell us a little bit about your background, because you're the person who produced and directed these documentaries we're going to see. Tell us how you got into that line of work.
I've always sort of been passionate about the human condition, I guess, since I was young. I never really knew, sorry, did I run here?
There you go.
Okay. And didn't really know sort of a place for it. It was a bit of an affinity of mine. And so anyway, documentaries fit pretty well with that. I love people, and I think, I like to kind of, I like documentary work a lot, but I also really like sort of diving into people's lives and their backstories. And, yeah.
So I haven't seen these. We're all going to see them for the first time together in a few minutes. Did you use archival footage in this stuff?
I did.
And so where did you find that?
I dug. I stole. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, was it like newsreels from the 20s and stuff?
Yeah. It, it's difficult to, as Mark is saying, there's not a lot of footage or photographs of Musso's up until recently, So, so I have to kind of get creative and create my own.
So did the Ruda and Gonzalez family have stuff stashed away?
They did. A lot of the photographs, obviously, of Ruben and Sergio came from their families.
That's what I figured.
Yeah.
Oh, that must be cool.
And Sergio, turns out, had a lot photographs. He liked to take photographs, so that helped.
What did you learn while putting this doc together that you didn't know?
Probably what I didn't know is the deep amount of love that people have for these two men, as well as Musso's. I mean, I knew obviously a lot about Musso's and the history and what an icon it was, and yeah, I guess that was sort of the deep love that these people have for Ruben and Sergio. That was probably a surprise.
Do you have any Sergio or Ruben stories you can tell us?
You know, I don't.
We're about to
Unfortunately.
see him.
You put everything
yeah,
on the screen pretty much.
I would say that the majority of my stories sort of come out in the film. A little bit of my interactions with them, I think, comes through in the film a little bit.
So Ruben died in April and Sergio in June. Lots of press. Why do you think Southern California was so interested in these two individuals?
They were special, and I think that's why they had a gift of love and connection, and that was felt. And I would say, aside from them being incredibly unique individuals, the lore also was that they were consistent, and they were a person that you could go to sort of uplift you, or they really affected people's moods, and always seemed to bring happiness to people.
Were there particular individuals that you were seeking out to tell stories about these folks?
With Ruben, the way these two films came about, actually, they weren't really supposed to be films. The Ruben documentary was just a little kind of slideshow / little video presentation that I was going to do for his 50th anniversary. And it was just going to be to show the staff. And within like 5 minutes, I had written a script, and I decided, even though I had like less than a week to do this film, I was going to make it as good as I could. And so we shot everything in one day. Animation, I think, may have taken 2 days, and then I went to the editing room and emerged like 2.5 days later. And then this film came about. And then when Ruben passed, I went back into the editing room and cleaned it up. And that's what you're going to see tonight. And I also added a bit at the end to reflect his passing.
When you put a show together, those of us, I've been doing reality TV for way too long, and you shoot, oh my God, 100 hours of film or tape, and you have to cut it down to 42 minutes. And you always say, well, the audience at home will never know what was left on the cutting room floor. You got 50 years of a man's life, and you put it in 20 minutes. Tell me how difficult that must have been.
That was difficult. Sergio was probably a little more difficult, but with Ruben, what I found with Ruben that I didn't expect either is that he really wanted to say some things that maybe he didn't have the platform to say, or it maybe was the time in his life at that point to say those things. And that, and I think I had felt that previous to our interview, I guess, which I sort of had tailored my script, but also my questions towards, because I sort of sensed that. And yeah, and he, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It does. So what are your plans for, this is the world premiere, we all can see it for the first time, but do you have plans to take this elsewhere, Netflix or Amazon or someplace like that?
As I was saying, so the Ruben documentary, it's so funny, this was supposed to be just a little video, I really had no plans for it, so I don't know. And then with Sergio, it's much of the same. Me and like 4 people total, we ended up shooting like 4 days of interviews, and I think we shot 14 or 15 people. But they said a lot, and these were long days, and we have a lot of great, material, and and so condensing that down was difficult. But as far as like going, like where it's going, I really didn't I don't have a plan for that. Yeah, I have no idea.
Well, I might be able to step in here a little bit too,
Yeah.
because there's been some talk and we haven't really been public with it yet, but we're going to start really putting together and tasking Tina with putting together a feature documentary. And so a lot of this work is going to end up going in that feature documentary, and we're safe to say that now that
Oh, nice.
we're going to start this process.
Oh, good.
It won't just
So
end up on the-
it'll be the whole history of the restaurant and include these gentlemen in it as well.
These guys will absolutely be
Yeah.
included in it, yeah.
Musso Franks would be, Musso Franks love these guys. There's no
They
question.
really want it. You know,
Yeah.
Sergio put 47 years into that restaurant. Ruben put 50. I mean, combined, they come up with almost 100 years of the restaurant. And you know, the relationships that they were able to develop with all of us, and is really something remarkable. And we always knew that they had those kinds of relationships, but like Tina was saying, we didn't really know exactly how deep these relationships and friendships and love with them and you know the guests really went, and it really was amazing to see how much love there was between these guys and really everybody.
It's like coming home when you go there. That's what it's like.
It
You
is.
know,
It is.
it's your family almost. And I can't think of, I always think of Taddage Grill in San Francisco as the closest to Musso, but not quite there.
Not quite there, and you know they're a little bit older than us. They were born in 1849 up there, but and it is kind of the same cuisine, the same style, the same ambiance. But there's a certain feel that you get at Musso's that you really can't replicate anywhere else, and it certainly is a place where you come not just to to be with people and you come to a family restaurant, but you really come to be a part of our family.
Yeah,
And that
it's
is
a more
absolutely true.
warm and fuzzy feeling there, no question
Absolutely.
about it. We have some special guests we'd like to introduce to you. Leo Ruda, the son of Ruben Ruda, and now a server and a bookkeeper at Musso and Frank, and Alex Gallardo, the son-in-law of Sergio Gonzalez, and now a server at Musso and Frank's. Could you stand up and let us say hi and thank you for being here and keeping it going in the family? Where are you folks? Are you here? You're supposed to be here?
I'm not sure
They didn't show up. They died off. They couldn't even show. Well, I tell you what, we're going to learn about them here. I appreciate you folks being here. Round of applause for Mark and Tina for being here. And let's roll that videotape, as they say, and take a look at this. Thank you folks for being here.
Thank you all very, very much.